What cheer, y'all? Welcome back to Red at the Wire. Well, we've got a little lull after the Preakness. What a great race that was. I'm sure everybody would agree on that. Um, Now we've got a little lull before the Belmont, so I thought we'd re-explore a concept Nina, one of our subscribers, brought to us about taking a look at ordinary races on an ordinary day of racing, like claiming races, allowance, maidens, maiden claimers. We've already done a maiden special weight post, so today we're going to talk about claiming races. And a very important concept of horse racing that you can apply to every single type of race is ask yourself the question, why do they run horse races? The answer is to win, yes, but also to determine the value of the horses that run in the race. So if a horse, is a grade one stakes winner, obviously he's going to be worth a lot more than a horse who's never won a race. But claiming races, the value is easily determined. If you run for 20,000, like the horses in the fourth race at Churchill Downs on Thursday are going to, you're worth $20,000. If somebody claims you, they just bought you for $20,000. Regardless of how much earnings you have, regardless of what your price was at the sale, you're worth $20,000 if you run in a $20,000 claiming race. The races are all run to determine the value of the horses. So if you run in a $20,000 claiming race, that's what your value is. So very important concept to remember, particularly when you're thinking about claiming races. If the drops in class, the raises in class, they're all calculated for effect and for a reason. If you can determine the reasoning behind that by looking at the running lines, then you can determine whether or not this is a horse who should be of value to you in your wagering in a claiming race. So, this is the fourth race. It's running a mile at Churchill Downs. That's one turn. Claiming race for 20,000, non-winners of two, lifetime. So these are horses who have only won their maiden race, whether it be a maiden special weight or a maiden claimer. It's for 3-year-olds and up. So 3-year-olds, it's a big challenge for them to run against older horses. So consequently, they get a weight allowance, and in this case, it's 6 pounds. The older horses run at 126. The 3-year-olds run at 120. And if they haven't won at a race of a mile or more since April 22nd, they get 2 more pounds, so they can run at 118 at the lowest. That's an 8-pound difference. Very important to remember when you're looking at these type of races. And we can see right off the bat with our first horse, Pierce Elevated, number 1, is carrying 118 pounds. So he's got an 8-pound advantage over the field. First thing we want to look at, of course, is pedigree. Whether it's maidens, stakes races, Kentucky Derby races, allowance, pedigree is important. You always want to check the pedigree of every horse in every race, and even at the claiming race level. We see these horses by Classic Empire out of a Go Sapper mare. Mile's not going to be a problem. You see highlighted the average winning distances. No problem. Walter Rodriguez is the jockey. They've only run, John Hancock, the trainer's only used this jockey one time, but they did win. And look at the odds they got. 18.24 to 1. And guess who he ran him on? Pierce Elevated. So that's a good sign. This horse comes back. They won their last race, and it was a long shot. So let's see if this horse can build off it. First thing we do is, after the connections, and noting that second off the layoff is a marginal angle for John Hancock, 6%. Now we want to look at the work tab. We want to see works 7 days apart. Anytime there's a gap in that pattern, if it's not a race, we want to be a little concerned about it. Not as big a deal with claiming horses because they run a lot more than stakes horses do. So claiming horses generally run anywhere from every 2 weeks to every month. So you sometimes don't see a lot of works for them, so it shouldn't give you a whole lot of concern. A horse who runs on a very regular basis might not have a work for 6 months. obviously if he's continuing to run, he can still run. So just a little thought about works. The earlier on in their career, the more you want to see. But when they're an old hard knocker who run and claiming races every 2 weeks like clockwork, not so important. So just a little note about that. Obviously, if you see bullets or a big improvement in the work tab, it's something that's noteworthy. But again, at the claiming level, you're generally not going to see a whole lot of that. So don't put a whole lot of stock in works, but always check them and always take a look. So we see this horse debuted at Churchill Downs at 4.5 furlongs in a maiden race. Generally, those races don't amount to very much. With the exception of Clever Again, who ran in the Preakness in one of those 4.5 furlong races, you generally don't see much for those horses afterwards. It means they're a little precocious, but they generally don't stretch out into better, I have found, as a rule. This didn't do much running in that race, and so they put on the shelf until January, gave a 6-month break, moved to Turfway to the synthetics around 2 turns, runs in the maiden special weight, not very good. So they've had 2 maiden special weight efforts. This horse hasn't run very well. So what do? They say, okay, well, we've lost a lot of hope in this horse. We're going to drop in class. Hopefully can get the diploma. And if we lose, we're not going to be brokenhearted about it. Runs at the maiden 30 level. You see, it was rated a 107 race, got a 109 class rating, so ran better, and for the 3rd straight race, this horse has run a better class rating. So there's a little bit of improvement, but still can only muster a 3rd, but was bobbled at the start, pressed the pace, and was game. So there's a little bit of excuse, a little bit of promise. Keep at the maiden 30 level in the next start at a mile at Turfway, and doesn't do very well. Bumped at the start, rushed up, and then consequently faded back. So now they've seen this horse for 3 times at Turfway, and it's not going very well, and they're not seeing enough improvement. So what do? They move to Churchill Downs to the dirt and drop to 20,000. And again, the synthetic to dirt angle here worked pretty well because this horse came back, runs a career high Brisnet number, and gets the win. So that's encouraging, obviously. And now they've probably found the right place to run this horse. They found the right class level at about 20,000. 20,000 non-winners at 2 lifetime, not that big a step up from maiden claiming. So it's probably a pretty good fit. Now you're getting an 8-pound weight allowance. This horse seems to be in good form, coming in second off the layoff. The tab looks okay, and the price is pretty good at 10-1. 3-year-old against older. We'll see what the rest of the field looks like, but right now, this is a horse who seems to be headed in the right direction and has the pedigree to stretch out to a mile. This is a horse I'll consider, especially at 10-1. So now we come to Spoonie, number 2, trained by Matt Shirer, pretty good claiming trainer. It's first off the claim, of which he's at 14%, which is a little bit above average, pretty good. Excuse me, I got cotton mouth. Been a long day. So this isn't a bad scenario. Putting blinkers on the horse for the first time. He's by honor code. So a mile's not going to be a problem. So we look and we see the tab looks okay. No biggie there. We see this horse started on turf for 3 races and didn't do very well at the maiden special weight level. They moved to Turfway, knowing turf horses can run on synthetic pretty well. They dropped to maiden 50, ran an okay 4th, but so they figured maybe he's close, so we'll drop him to maiden 30, a better shot at winning. Doesn't respond very well, forced out first turn, just a disaster. So look what happens. They drop him all the way down to a maiden 7,500. That's begging somebody to claim him. That's a huge drop. They put Ramon Hernandez aboard, and he runs an okay 3rd. He should at a monster class drop like that, but the desired result occurred in that Vicky Oliver lost this horse to Steve Asmussen. And that's what they wanted, somebody to come and claim this horse, and they did. So boom, Spoonie is off their hands. They're happy to be rid of him. So Steve Asmussen gets a hold of him, keeps it synthetic, keeps it raises up to maiden 15. No improvement. So they keep it maiden 15 for another race. A little more time to train, a little more time to work out the kinks doesn't help. But in the third start, moving back to dirt at Oaklawn, at the maiden 20 level, they finally get a win. They get a decent effort out of this horse, and it's a key race. Dr. Storm, who finishes second, comes back to win. It was in the slop. Now, a lot of times, horses who run on turf and synthetic can do pretty well in the slop. So there's some guarded optimism. They moved to one turn at Churchill Downs in the 16,000 non-winners at 2 lifetime. More of a step aside than a step up in class, but it is against winners and runs an okay third. Now, I've got Jose Ortiz was the jockey. Why is he highlighted in pink? As you guys know, when I highlight, green is good, gold is pretty good, okay in some spots. Pink is caution, and red is danger. Red is not good. So a Hall of Fame caliber jockey like Jose Ortiz, why would I put him in pink? The reason is simple. You've got a horse through their career has not done a lot of running. Was fortunate enough to get the win at the maiden 20 level. Now, what do? Do they put in a starter allowance and protect this horse? No. They send right to the claiming ranks at claiming 16,000 to get rid of this horse. And that's why they put Jose Ortiz aboard. It's not because they're that optimistic they think this horse is necessarily going to get a win. This is called dressing up a horse. The chances are they want to get rid of this horse. It's of no consequence to Steve Asmussen. He claimed the horse for $7,500. He gets claimed at $16,000. They make a little profit, and they've already made their money back because this horse won at the maiden 20 level. So a lot of times when you see these high-powered barns have a high-powered jockey on a horse who looks a little suspect, in the claiming ranks, that's called dressing up a horse. It generally means they want to get rid of them. They think, but by putting a high-profile jockey on, some owner's going to go, oh, well, they must think a lot of that horse. They put John Velasquez on a Todd Pletcher horse. Well, that's exactly the illusion they're trying to create. Very important to see. It's not glaring here, but I think that's probably the reason behind it. And consequently, the horse got claimed. He's off Steve Asmussen's books, made a little money off the horse, on to the next one. Now it's Matt Shirer's problem. So this is a horse we can look at. He seems to be comfortable at this class level. 20-1 is a pretty good price, but I want to see a little bit more in the paddock because this has been a pretty checkered career, and just the fact that they dropped this horse to $7,500 early in the maiden career, just begging for somebody to get rid of him. Chances are there's some inherent problems there. So Spoonie is one we probably want to let go, but for the right price, we might consider if we can see some positives getting closer in the paddock or at post time. Standard of Proof. Now this is really a great example of dressing up. Now, Nick Vaccaressa is not a high-profile trainer, but you don't have to be to dress up a horse. Now, why do I say that? This horse was sold at the Keeneland April 7th for $50,000. Look at the stud fee of Gunrunner. It was $250,000. So that means the breeder, Aaron Jones, lost $200,000 on this horse right out of the box. So he was sold for $50,000. Since he's had 6 starts, he's made $41,000. Now he's running at a $20,000 claimer. Okay, that's a bit of a red flag because he's running lower than his actual purchase price. So Jose Ortiz is in the irons. That is a positive, of course, but there may be other reasons for it aside from the fact that they think this horse can win. And that's called dressing a horse up. Please take him off our hands. For the uninitiated, for the more naive, that's who they're looking for, somebody to swoop in and take this horse. Now, how do I know that? Well, I go back and I look at the work tab, and I see the work tab isn't bad, but we look at the running lines, and we see this horse debuted at Saratoga 3 years ago in a maiden special weight, didn't do much running, lost to Verifying, who ran on the Derby Trail, so no disgrace there, but this horse goes to the bench for over a year. Comes back in Monmouth in September, runs at the maiden special weight level, and gets the win. So that's positive. And determinedly. So it looked like a pretty good start, and there was no injury that really impacted the way this horse can run. And he did so at 2 turns at 3 years old. So that's all positive. So consequently, they move him to an allowance N1X, non-winners at 2 lifetime, the logical progression from a maiden special weight win, and crash. He runs right up the track. He's keen early, can't sustain it, falls right back. Not a good sign. But that'll happen against winners for the first time, so they haven't given up yet. So Gulfstream Park, synthetic at an option 25, a little easier spot, not much, but a little bit, and you get pretty much the same result. Is Keen is up amongst the leaders a little early and falls back. So this horse is probably outclassed at these levels, despite the fact that Brisnet figures are not bad. So they drop to an option 16 at Tampa after a little time off, and they get a third. So the drop in class was a help, and get the note of improved position. That's usually a good sign. A horse can get better. Now, look who the trainer was. It was Chad Brown. What do we know about Chad Brown's? Chad Brown's horses go from maidens to allowance to stakes races. If they can't run in either, they go up for a claim. And then they're really dressed up, because that means he wants to get rid of them. They don't fit in with his scheme. They can't run. That's what I mean about dressing up. So I don't know whether this horse was unprotected or not, but I suspect he probably was. At 16,000, nobody took him. And he ran an okay third. But now they switched trainers, whether it was a private sale or what it was. But now he's out of Chad Brown's hands. He's Nick Vaccares's problem. So now April, they go to Keeneland. He goes back to 1 turn at 7 furlongs. He puts him in an $80,000 claimer, non-winners at 2 lifetime. Big step up in price. And that's why that's highlighted in red, because that's an indication of we're hoping somebody at Keeneland, one of these new money people or naive, sees this horse, sees the name, sees Gunrunner, and will take him off his hands. He put Irad Ortiz in the irons to dress him up, and nobody took him. And he runs up the track. This is not a horse you want to bet back, even with him. Look at the class drop. This is from 80,000 to 20,000. That's like 3 steps. Second off the layoff, where he ran his worst race Brisnet number to date. And look the way he ran it. 86, 94, and then just fell right off a cliff. Not a horse you want to touch, regardless of Jose Ortiz being the irons or not. My sense is they're trying to get rid of this horse. I would pass, especially at 5-1. So now we come to Sandini. We see Robert Medina, Christian Torres. They don't really work together too often, but Christian Torres is a nice jockey, and that's a pretty good sign. Bernardini, Tabasco Cat underneath, no problem in a mile. This horse has had 2 starts. We look at the maiden, we look at the work tab, and it's okay. I'd like to see a lot of works out of a horse who's a maiden, and I'd like to see them continue in training. So we're seeing that, and it's an ordinary work tab. It's okay. Nothing really can tell from it, especially the last couple of works. Were pretty good, but not great. So at Oakland Park, he debuts in a maiden 50 in the mud at a mile and a 16th, runs up the track. Very difficult for horses to debut around 2 turns. Not easy. So we can give a little bit of a pass. Let's see what he does in the next start. Comes out at a mile in a maiden 20. So they dropped him 2 classes right after his debut. And he runs in a pretty poor race, rated 104. That's one of the lowest race ratings you'll see. And he wins the race, but it's a 109 class rating. Generally, the horses in this race, the winner's probably going to get a 113. You see the fractions were 76, 67. He got a breather on the backstretch, and he closed with a, moderately. So that was a pretty piss poor field he ran against. That's what you can tell from that. Despite the considerable improvement, he's going to be really up against it in this next start. Hasn't shown me enough that I would get excited about him. It is a step, not a big step up in class, but the horses generally have been running better. He's going to be going against, I would pass on Sandini. Infinite Luck for Tom Amoss. Tom Amoss is a good claiming trainer. You know him from America's Day at the Races, and he's very prominent at fairgrounds, and a good guy. I met him up at Saratoga. Really nice guy. We look and you see he's dropping this horse in 2 classes. He wins at 31% doing that, so it's a positive angle. Got Edgar Morales in the irons. They don't work together too much and haven't won a race in the last 18, so there's no angle there. Excuse me. This horse is by Cairo Prince with Medaglia d'Oro underneath, so miles no problem. In fact, he's had 2 starts at the distance with a win in the second, so that's positive. Looking at the work tab, you see April 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, steady, 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 race on the 3rd, and then right back 12 days later with a work on the 15th. So, okay, he's off the layoff and he's into training. So, he debuts at Indiana Grand. I don't like horses transferring from Indiana Grand anywhere. Their form never holds up very well. Brad Cox usually sends his JV to break their maiden in Indiana Grand. Nothing against Indiana Grand. Nice, John G. Julie's a great race caller. It's a nice track. It's just the quality of the horses, not very good. Sorry. So we see he debuted on the turf in maiden 40, not very much. They follow back. They move him up to a maiden special weight. And that is probably because he's a 2-year-old and trying to find him a route, a race around 2 turns. They'll do that. Just put him in one, whether it's turf or dirt, wherever they can get 2 turns if they think the horse wants it. So, because his first race didn't necessarily warrant stepping him up in class. So he gets a maiden special weight, runs okay, and gets 2nd place. The 61 Brisnet figure, nothing to write home about, but a little bit of encouragement. So now he runs at the fairgrounds at a maiden special weight, and he's up the track. So it's a little outclassed again. So they drop him to a maiden 30. Now he's off the turf, and he wins. But look at the race rating, 106, and the class rating 111. That's why it's highlighted in pink, because it's really no great shakes to win your maiden race or any race off the turf. Most of the good horses who were going to run on turf don't want to run on dirt, so they scratch them out. You're left with a smaller field, and usually the talent is kind of marginal. So he broke his maiden, got a career-high Brisnet number, but he basically, you look at those pace numbers, he walked around the track. Not a feather in his cap. Even though it was a key race, consecrated, came back to win as well. Not something I'm going to get really excited about. You see Jose Cameo was the trainer, and now he's with Tom Amoss. So maybe the owners are thinking, okay, well, he won a race. He looks like he's heading in the right direction. Let's give him to a better trainer and see what happens. Well, Tom Amoss gets him. They stretch him out on the dirt at a mile. They raise him in class at an option 50, and he gets second, but he's no match for the winner whatsoever. But, let's see. So the next start, they give him a little time off. They keep him at the option 50 level, same class, same race level, at a mile 70, around 2 turns, runs fourth, but pretty much the same race because he loses by about the same amount, and he's no match for the top 3 now. But his speed figures are improving. That's something, I guess, but that may have something to do with the better competition carrying his numbers better. So now they move to Kentucky Derby Day at Oak Lawn Park after a little time off on the dirt, and they've dropped him to a claiming 40. And basically you see, I think the honeymoon's over. They had a little optimism with him at the 50 level, didn't work out. So now it's like we've pretty much, we're going to try to get him a win at a lower level, and if somebody takes him, fine. So on debut at 40,000 N2L, he runs a 78, which is near his best figure. But look how far back he was. E1 and E2, 62, 63, 94, and he really never factored in the race. And the reason being, he had way too much to do from the back. Even though he started the race at third, he was quick to fall back. Not a recipe for success. And he's liable to get a little better. It's possible second off the layoff, moving down a couple rungs in class. But his running style doesn't really indicate to me that he can win this race. I think maybe he can get underneath. We'll see what he looks like. But he's kind of a marginal horse either way based upon the story he's told so far from his running lines, which is a horse who, he's a social runner quite a bit, and the only time he's been effective with a win was in a really low-class race without a lot of talent in the field, and he walked around the track. So infinite luck, kind of leaning towards throwing out, but maybe has a little bit of value underneath. So Shattuck, number 6, he's trained by Nolan Ramsey. And this is a really good scenario for him. It's all highlighted in green there. 46 to 90 days, 26%. First start with the trainer, 22%. And a shipper, 22%. So these are all positives for Shattuck. And he's got Luis Saez aboard. So there's a lot of positives right off the bat. It's a good scenario for the trainer. We go down to the work tab and we see he's had... He's been on the bench since the 28th of March, and over the course of that layoff, he's had 3 works. I'd like to see a little more than that when a horse has been on the bench, and you can see they had basically didn't do anything with him for about a month. So something went wrong, obviously. But the good news is he's with a new trainer. And he's been with this trainer for a while. And when a trainer has had about a month, and he's good at getting horses first with the trainer, he can put his training regimen in. He can work out the kinks. He can start feeding him better. A lot of positives. So there's some encouragement there. And you see the works were pretty good at Keeneland. Not great, not bad. They were okay. Incidentally, a bullet isn't going to excite me unless it's like first out of 50. First out of 7, it's 1 minute and 2 isn't bad, but it's not really telling. So just please consider that. So now we look at the running lines and we see he's had 12 lifetime starts, so 2 maiden efforts we can't see. They put him around 2 turns at Oak Lawn Park in a maiden 15, didn't run a lick. Dropped him to a maiden 40, ran third to Golden Plate, who's in this field. We'll see in the next slot. And it was a key race, finished third. So they move up in class to maiden 50 at a mile and a 16th, and he wins. But look how far back he was. Look at those fractions, 60 and 61, and you see throughout all his races how far back he is and how much work he leaves himself to do late. And we would go through, we could go through all the races here, but the bottom line is you see a very consistent pattern here of a horse who takes way too long to get going. And this is the kind of horse that I don't care how fast they run up top, can never win because he just has way too much to do and he doesn't close with enough fervor. And you want an example of that, it's Sandman is kind of one of those horses. He's a closer who doesn't have a really big kick. Anyway, enough about the Preakness. You see they put him in the allowance ranks after his win for a couple, and pretty much the same problem. He's just too far back. So then they drop him to a claiming price of $55,000. Finishes an okay fourth. They move him up to starter allowance, protect him, runs another okay fourth. Then they drop him to $35,000 to see if they can get a win. He's too far back again. He finishes sixth. For some reason, they claimed from John Prather for $35,000. David Jacobson did. And he puts him into Temperance Hill, a 1.5 mile race. And this horse has no chance whatsoever because, again, look at the fractions. He's way too far back, and he's no match for these stakes horses. So what happens? He gets claimed. Nolan Ramsey takes a month, works with him. Now they drop him into a $20,000 claimer. That's significant because that's the lowest class level he's ever run at and coming off the bench, and Luis Saez aboard. That's a horse who's dressed up. He's been dropped in class. When that low, they're trying to get rid of him. That's a really good indication that they just want him out of there. So this is a horse I probably wouldn't bet regardless of the fact that he's dressed up because he's just got too much to do late and he just can't close with enough authority to factor. So this is a horse I would probably toss. So now we come to Golden Plate. He's trained by John Ortiz. Well, that's a good sign right off the bat because John Ortiz is a really nice trainer. He's good at claiming, good at allowance, good at stakes races, a solid trainer. Raylu Gutierrez is the jockey. He's only used him once, but they won, and look at the odds they got. 54.70 to 1. Pretty damn good. So that's a pretty good sign here. Doesn't use him a lot, but the time he did was pretty good. Well, we got a red flag right off the bat. This horse sold for $350,000 at Keeneland's September sale and has career earnings of $56,000 and is now running in a $20,000 claiming race. This is a bust. That's what this is. However, John Ortiz is a nice trainer, and he's coming in second off the layoff. That's a good, positive spot. So we'll see. Now, we look down at the tab, and he's been working steadily. Had the race on April 10th, and then they gave him a month with no work. So that's a little concerning. But again, with claiming horses, it's not as much as a concern as it would be with a maiden or with a stakes performer. So we look at the running lines we see. Started off at Aqueduct in the maiden ranks at 1 mile and a 16th, mile and an eighth, turf and dirt. Nothing helped. They kept him, moved him to Oaklawn, nothing again. So then they drop him to the maiden 50. Now they're starting to lose the hope. And he doesn't run well again, so they drop him to a maiden 30. And finally, he shows some life, and he runs a decent third and loses to Rivetage, who's in this race. We'll see later. And it's a key race because Golden Plate comes back to win. So now he's at a class level that seems to work for him. They move him up to a maiden 40, not that much of a jump, and he wins. And he wins with a very solid effort. And he beats Shattuck, who we just saw. Which isn't that much, but hey, it's something. And Shattuck won his next start. So he's had a couple races. He's been in decent company. We do see he ran against Domestic Product, who was prominent on the Derby Trail last year. Not that big a deal, though. So anyway, out of that race, he's claimed from Kenny McPeak. And, and so Kenny McPeak probably, at this point, is like, okay, we lost him, no big deal. And we probably got the most out of him. We sold him for 40,000, and we get the winner's check as well. So we probably made about 60 grand out of this, out of a horse who was just turning out to be a nightmare based upon what they paid for him. So they're probably very happy to be rid of him. So first off the claim for John Ortiz, he moves him up to an option 100,000 non-winners at 2, and he doesn't run bad, doesn't run great, but he doesn't run bad. He finishes 6th. So the next race, he keeps him at the option 100, but this time in N1X, little better race, rated 114, doesn't respond, doesn't run well at all. In the slop, so we can maybe forgive it. We see he's had 5 races in the mud and hasn't run terribly well. He does have a second, but how did he get that second? They dropped him in class from 100,000 down to 30,000 non-winners at 2. And again, that's right around the same place where he won his maiden at 40,000. So he's at about the right class level. He runs a really good race, but just can't quite get to joint venture. Stalked, 2 to 3 path, bid, denied. So he runs his career high, but the disturbing thing is now he goes to the bench. And he goes to the bench for almost a year. That can be very troubling. Now, what you want when you see a layoff like that in a claiming race, what price does he come back at? And you see, he came back at a 40,000 level. So obviously he's healed well from the injury, and it hasn't impeded his running style because he's running at basically the same class he ran at before the injury. And he comes out and he runs okay and gets 5th. That's a race, that's a horse who needed a race. That's what that running line looks like. He was keen early, tried to get engaged, and he probably fell flat because he was a little too keyed up to run after being on a layoff. So this is a horse that now I know he's okay. He's at 4 years old. There's still room for improvement, and he's coming into the race second off the layoff for a good trainer. And he's got Raylu Gutierrez aboard. I'll give him a shot. So Golden Plate, while he's not 100%, he's got some positives, enough for me to consider. And particularly since he can run up amongst the leaders in some of his better efforts in a race that doesn't have a lot of speed, Golden Plate is a win candidate here. And that's why I've highlighted his name in gold, because he's shown me, particularly with a trainer like John Ortiz, he's a viable win candidate despite being a bust. Stella Vino is trained by Jade Cunningham, and you see she's got a small sample size, only 2 races, but she's been in the money in both with a win in the third. And this is a trainer who is a small barn, but can surprise on occasion, and I know this. So I'm a little interested right off the bat. See her barn's going well. She's got Florent Giroux in the irons. And we look very quickly at the running lines of this horse, and we see he likes to run up amongst the leaders. And we know Florent Giroux is very aggressive with horses, particularly when they like to run up amongst the leaders. So that's a pretty good fit. We see this horse went for 100,000 at the Keeneland November sale, has 66,000 in earnings, so hasn't made back his sale price, and now is running for 20,000. So that's a little bit of a concern. Excuse me. So we go from that. So we have some things to be a little excited about. Second off the claim, 1 for 5. Not enough of a sample to get excited about, but it's not negative either. So we look at the tab and we see, since had a bit of a break from March to May and had 4 works, April 12th, 19th, 26th, and then a race on the 3rd, and right back to a work on May 17th. Good and steady. That's exactly what you want to see. If a horse is working regularly, doing it every 7 days like clockwork, that's a good sign. Now, This horse had 13 races. We don't see 3 of them, so it took 3 starts to win at least. It may have taken 3 to win the maiden, but did it fairly early on, so that's not a bad sign. But we see at the allowance N1X level, 4 starts in a row, 3 seconds, and a third. And you look at those running lines, and it indicates a horse who probably had every chance to win all 3 of those races and didn't do it. So there may be a case of seconditis here. That's what those running lines say. And you see, after the 4th one, they drop to a claiming race of 50,000, and this horse runs a lot better, but can only muster a third. So now you're starting to think this is a social runner. He just likes to run with the boys. And you see, he was claimed from Brad Cox. Again, these big barns, what do? Brad Cox barn, maiden, allowance, stakes level. If they're not going to make it at the allowance level or the stakes level, they go up for a claim. So he's pretty much had it with this horse because he's not progressing past what they expected. Puts in a maiden 50 and gets claimed. Hip hip hooray, he's off my hands. He had Luis Saez aboard him. Basically, that's dressing the horse up to get rid of him, and it worked. And they got him claimed for 50,000 plus the winner's share. It's almost back to the 100,000 for the sale price. So now to Churchill Downs, Jade Cunningham takes over, puts in a starter allowance, protecting the horse, first time off the claim. Let's see what he can do. And he runs an okay 5th. And you see he brushed the gate, and he was on his left lead. So not the greatest effort, but, first race off the claim, maybe getting used to the trainer a little bit. Takes some time off, comes out in January at an option 55, and fades to an 8th. So from that race, they drop to a claiming non-winners of 2 lifetime at 50, and responds, runs better, runs an 85, a career best Brisnet number, but still only manages 4th. So they drop again to 32,000 at a mile and a 16th, non-winners at 2, and has a chance to win it, but again fades to 4th. So this is a horse who just doesn't want to win. Excuse me. So Aaron Shorter takes over. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It was Aaron Shorter who had the horse, not Jade Cunningham. So the horse is claimed from him for 32,000, and again, they're probably saying hip hip hooray because this horse doesn't like to win. Jade Cunningham takes over, and at a mile and a 16th, 40,000 claimer, non-winners of 2 lifetime, a little bit of a step up, and you see this horse again doesn't win, closer, 3 wide, relented. And what's really troubling is this horse didn't run very much at all early on. You see that early fractions of 61 and 67, closed well with a 95, but really had no factor in the race. So this is a horse who talent-wise, speed figure-wise, is a fairly good fit, is dropping significantly in class, but really what the issue is, this horse just doesn't like to win. Now, this is a horse I would put in my exacta or trifecta all day long, but I would never put on top to win because this horse doesn't like to and doesn't really know how and has had every chance to. So Stellavino is one I don't want too short a price on. 9 to 2 would probably be about right, and is one I would consider for under only. So Metalhead, number 9, is trained by Alexis Clare. Now, she's a pretty good trainer. She's got a small barn, but can be very, very hot at times. And you see first off the claim is a really good angle for her. It's at 20% and out of 65 horses. Sprint to route, 18%. Sprint to route, 21%. So a lot of positives. It's a good scenario. This is at a mile, and the horse is by Tonalist. Tonalist can run all day, so we know the mile isn't going to be a problem, and stretching out is probably going to be a pretty good thing, as a matter of fact. You got Ben Curtis in the irons, good solid jockey. We look at the tab, and we see that it's a little interspersed. It's not, it's one of the classic claiming type of work tab. There's some gaps in it, but they're mostly because of races and ownership changes and things like that. So it's not a big knock on this horse. We see this horse has had 9 starts, 1 first out in a maiden special weight. Now remember I told you about that, non-winners at 2 lifetime. When you see horses win at the special weight level, you pay particular attention, because a lot of times it does demonstrate this horse does have some class and has some talent and may have a big edge over those that won their maiden in a maiden claiming race. And you can thank my friend at Trust the Profits, Riders Up Tim, for that angle. And it's proven to be very successful, so something to keep in mind. So, and won in a key race as Accident, the 3rd place finisher, came back and won. So they moved to Ellis Park, running a mile at the logical progression, the N1X allowance, and finishes an okay 3rd. Led at the quarter, 2-path upper, missed place, so got passed late by Silver Heist, who came back to win. So it was another key race. So now it goes to Churchill Downs. They run at another N1X allowance, runs the 3rd straight top Brisnet figure, but it's better competition, and a lot of times, even if a horse finishes up the track, they can run a better speed figure than they have before because they get elevated by the higher class. And this is probably a case of that. You see, it was a good race. Kinetic, who came back to win, and King Russell, who's a really good allowance level horse. So that's another key race. So very good competition for this horse, but not, and has been equal to it to a degree, but probably a little overmatched as we're getting higher up the food chain. So they go to Churchill Downs. They put in an 80,000 claimer, non-winners at 2 lifetime. It's not necessarily giving up on the horse, because that's still a pretty good price, and the horse sold for 26,000, so this would be a major profit. But it's a good indication we're willing to part ways with this horse too. And you see, it proves a disaster. This horse doesn't run well at all. In yet another key race where Michaelicious, 2nd place finisher, came back to win. So that's 4 straight races of good competition. The first 2, pretty good, but as the class level has been getting better, it's clear that this horse probably has a ceiling. So they go to Turfway. They try one more time at the allowance level at 6.5, nothing doing. So now they drop back into the claiming race at the lowest tag yet at 30,000 at 6.5, and runs pretty well, but fades late. So the next race, they keep it to 6.5, but then now they drop to 15,000. So they cut the price in half, and this horse responds, runs a better race, gets a better Brisnet number, and you see was a favorite in the race. So now they've probably found the right place for this horse to run. So that is claimed from William Morey, who's a pretty good trainer, and is claimed by Joe Sharp, another very good claiming allowance trainer. So he keeps it Turfway, and he keeps it to 15,000 level, everything the same, and this horse comes right back and runs another 2nd. Widest stretch run for 2nd, so had to go very wide, lost some ground, so maybe capable of better, but as it is in a claiming race, this one gets claimed. So Joe Sharp only has for 1 start, got a check, probably lost a little bit of money perhaps, or broke about even, and that's the way it goes. So Tom Malloy takes this horse, keeps everything the same except bumps up to 20,000, and this horse runs another good race, runs 3rd for the biscuit. Tracked 4 wide, chased, held, show. So they ran a pretty good race, was wide, lost a little bit of ground, and was claimed again. So when you start to see horses popular at the claiming box like this, that tells you that, that they've got some talent. And again, this horse won at the maiden special weight level, first time out of the box. So there's some optimism. And we know this horse likes to run at the 20,000 level and is good at it. So this horse is running where they're supposed to for a trainer who's good first time off the claim, has the pedigree to go a mile, and this trainer was good stretching horses out. Win candidate. What else can you say? There's a lot of good things. This horse is running exactly where they're supposed to, and it's not, you see the trial by fire in the running lines where they experimented stepping up in class until this horse hit the ceiling, and now is running exactly where he can be effective, and that's at 20,000. So this should be a very good race for Metalhead, and he's an excellent fit here. This is the kind of horse you want to bet on in a claiming race. Finally, we look at Rivetage, trained by Steve Asmussen. So immediately we pay attention. He's a Hall of Famer, all-time leader in wins, and he knows how to claim with the best of them. We see the red flag is this horse went for $65,000 at the Keeneland September sale and is now running for $20,000, but has $78,000 in earnings, so he's paid his sales price. So it's not as glaring an angle as it is with others. You see, he's got his son Keith in the irons, and they're not doing very well. Only 4% out of 96 starts, so there's no angle there. This horse is 0 for 3 at Churchill Downs with 3/3 and 0 for 5 at a mile. So it's not the greatest scenario for Rivetage, especially at the 10 hole in a one-turn race. So now we're going to look at the work tab, as we do. We see the angles. We know Steve Asmussen for what he is. He's good at pretty much everything, and if he trains a horse, they're going to be able to run. Whether they run well enough, we'll tell from the running lines. But all I need to know is that Steve Asmussen is the trainer. Essentially, is what I'm saying. Now we look at the work tab, and we see pretty steady. Between the March and April races, had 2 works, and that's kind of pretty common work tab for a claiming horse. As I said, it's not overly important with claiming horses because they run more than stakes or allowance horses do. And so if you don't see that string of pearls, that steady 7-day work tab succession, not too big a deal. So we're not going to make a big deal out of this. I'm sure this horse is ready to roll. So this horse has had 16 starts, so has had quite a few bites at the apple before finally breaking the maiden at the 30,000 level at Oaklawn, and got a 77 Brisnet number. Didn't do a lot of running early. You see that 68, got a breather, 51 in the second call, and closed very strongly, and beat Golden Plate, who's in this race, and was game. That's always a good note. So was claimed from Kenny McPeak and by Matt Williams. So he saw a little something. It's 30,000 is now what this horse is worth. That's what you know after the horse is claimed. He steps this one up to 50,000, shows a sign of confidence, and runs a better race. Runs an 84 at the time, the high Brisnet number, but only manages 4th. Bobbled at the break, checked at 3/8, so there were some excuses. So they run back at Oaklawn at the claiming 50, non-winners at 2 lifetime. A little bit better race rated at 112 as opposed to 110. Runs, a little bit better. As he engaged a little more early in the race. And it is a key race, as I believe that's Atomic Gold, won it, and won the next start out. Fan 6 wide at the quarter, improved. So that's a positive. This horse is maybe getting it a little bit, so that's all good stuff. Gives a little time off, and is claimed from Matt Williams by Matt Shirer. And he gives a couple months off. Now that's important because now they have time to get their training regimen in, correct problems, feed better, all kinds of stuff. So in June, he keeps him at the 50,000 level, and he runs a decent enough third, inside, angled 1/16th, and rallied. And so the decent third, enough to be optimistic about. So now you get a 6-month layoff, so something must have happened, perhaps. And so you go back when you see that type of layoff. Now you want to see what the work tab looks like, and you see they had to work on the 28th and then a month. So something went wrong early on, and then they worked February a little erratically, gave March off. So they're still working through some kind of issue before so when they come back. And you see the two nondescript efforts at the starter allowance level and at the claiming 35. So they dropped in class after protecting from the starter allowance level. So now they're starting to lose hope again. And they drop one more time in March at the claiming for 25,000 level. And this horse runs a pretty good race, leads in the stretch and can't quite sustain it. In a key race, Fear of Union comes back to win. So now they pretty much know, okay, 25,000 looks like a good threshold for this horse. We've had to drop a couple times. Now is in a pretty good spot where this horse can be competitive. And you see at that point is claimed away from Matt Shiver and 10 Strike Racing. Now Asmussen's got this horse for 3 starts. And we see all 3 at Oakland are in the mud or on soft ground. He raises the claiming price to 35,000. So shows a little optimism, but the horse doesn't run well, runs evenly, pretty much around the track. And look how far back, 67, 70, 95. This horse had a lot of work to do, couldn't respond. So now they go mile 16th on a good track at 32,000, so they keep it about the same price. And again, this horse disappoints, but improved a little bit. So there's a little optimism. You can see in the finish, those last 3 races, 6.5 behind, 5 3/4 behind, 4 3/4 behind. So getting a little closer. Third race in the mud at 22.5, they dropped for the 3rd consecutive time, and it didn't help. This horse finished 4th because again, you see those early fractions. This horse has too much to do late. So in sum, they've dropped this horse down again to the 20,000 level, and the way he's been running lately, it would be very difficult, and especially a race where there's not a lot of pace, for this horse to win. So, you go back and look, and you don't really see any progression. You don't see any where this horse is necessarily improving, and in fact, he seems to be regressing, because now he's taking an awful lot of time to get going in races. And I can't bet a horse who's going to be that far back, particularly in a race like this where there isn't a lot of speed. So there it is. That's a claiming race. And so just in sum, we'll look at it. Rivetage is a horse I'd probably toss. I like Metalhead a lot in this race because it's a really good class fit, and it's a good positive angle for a good trainer. Lots to like. And with a race where there's not a lot of speed, the 9-hole isn't going to bother me too much. And at one turn, it may be to an advantage being outside as opposed to in, where you can get pinched. So Metalhead to me is a prime win candidate. Stellar Vino, even with the class drop, this horse looks like a social runner and just doesn't really like to win. And that's really the big turnoff. But maybe you can use underneath in the exotics, and that would be the best place. Golden Plate I think is a horse that, with the class drop for a good trainer like John Ortiz, is one that should benefit from the class drop. And again, has the running style to be up amongst the leaders, and I think that's a good place to be. with a lot of horses who have going to leave themselves with too much to do late. Shattuck, one of those horses, just going to be coming way from the clouds. There will never be enough pace for a horse like this. I would pass. Infinite Luck, I think, is a horse going the wrong way, and I don't think the class drop is enough to help this horse. Sandini, too much, hasn't shown me enough in the maiden win. Now going against winners as a 3-year-old, not good enough. Standard of Proof, this horse is dressed up, and I just think is really, really shaky, and it would be very hard for me. It's a horse I really just don't want any part of. I'll let this horse beat me. Spoonie is one I want to see what the odds are at post time. And maybe take a look at in the paddock. I can see where this horse might factor in the race, but also had a lot of bites at the apple before he broke his maiden. That's never a good sign. And that last race really wasn't enough to get me overly excited, but at the price, maybe I could see thrown in for Matt Shirer. And then finally, Pierce Elevate is a horse I would certainly want to consider using. I don't like taking maidens against winners for the first time unless they're really exceptional. But coming off the bench, moving to dirt, have been positives. Maybe there's been some growth since March of earlier this year. Maybe the light bulb's gone off, could have been a lot of things. But stretching out with an 8-pound weight allowance, there's a lot of reasons to like Pierce Elevated at 10-1. Probably would be, wouldn't be surprised if this horse is the speed of the speed, but I like the 9 to win. So you've seen a lot of different kinds of horses in this race, a lot of different angles you can look at for claiming horses. I hope it's been helpful, maybe give you a way to look differently at some of these ordinary races where the forms aren't as well defined as they are in stakes races, and maybe give you ways to look a little deeper to find some positives in a horse, or look deeper and find negatives in a horse that looks pretty good. And that's how you're going to make money betting horses, is where you can see something that somebody can't. And so these are just some ways that you can go about doing it. We're certainly going to do more of these, but this is, I hope you found it helpful, and I hope it gives you some insight as to how you can handicap a claiming race. If you do like content like this, please, of course, like and subscribe. Thanks again to all of you who have continued to grow our community. We had some great comments about the Preakness, a lot of input, a lot of it. It was all constructive for the most part, and I appreciate it. It makes for a really good community. Keep on keeping on. It was certainly an interesting situation. I don't think anybody was wrong, and so. Well, hopefully it's going to make for a really good Belmont, for which, of course, we will have full coverage. We're going to do something this weekend. I'm not sure what yet, as far as a sequence and a race card with best and value plays. So be on the lookout for that. And, of course, we'll have full coverage for the Belmont as we move forward. And I'm going to be there, and it looks like it's going to be a real fun one at Saratoga if the Preakness is any indication. So, much more on the way. We're going to do one of these for allowance races, maiden claimers, maybe optional claimers, and or an ungraded stakes, just to again expand your knowledge, maybe give you some insight from my experience that you perhaps haven't seen or weren't aware of. And just one final note: it is always important, to do your own reading, and there are plenty of great books out there. If you go to writeatthewire.com, I've listed quite a few that I used when I started that are still out there today that can give you a lot of great ideas on how to handicap, and this should be just a starting off point to your own journey to learn more and try to and become an artist at handicapping. So anyway, I hope I've wetted your whistle and got you interested to do a little more work on your own part. And reach out to me directly if you have any specific questions, and I will certainly try to help you along the way. So that's it from here. I'll talk to you soon, and until then, be well.